Hello BookTube, it's Louise, the big-haired bookworm. Lovely to see you again. We're about 2/3 the way through April and I thought I would go through the books that I've been reading this month and the audiobooks that I have been listening to, and also give you an idea of the kind of books that I'm currently reading, because I've got quite a few on the go because I have different books for different moods and that kind of thing. So I just thought I'd quickly go through them all for you. We've got quite a pile here, so let's get going. The first book I actually saw recommended on the web magazine Standard Issue. I don't know whether you've ever found it. It's brilliant. It is really, really good. It's really good, quick, interesting articles written by women for women, but just brilliant. Really good. A good, strong feminist feel to it, but they cover everything and they're really current. Anyway, she was talking about, this was a bookseller and an author who was talking about romance and how romance is considered a lesser genre. It is never considered I've been thinking a lot about this actually, and I'm always amazed at how many people diss romance, and I wonder whether that is an inherent sexism that we just suddenly feel because it is a genre that has been traditionally written by women for women, and it has always been considered lesser. It has not been considered proper reading if you're interested in romance, and people normally hide their romance novels and don't actually come out and say, yes, I read a lot of romance novels, especially historical romance. And she was recommending, it was Rowan Whiteside is the lady, and she was recommended, which I got it on my Kindle because I quite fancy it. Was cheap on the Kindle, so I went to it, is Venetia by Georgette Heyer, which is a terrible cover, but that's actually the one that she recommended, about 6 of them, and I thought, oh, I'll give them a go. I've never read a Georgette Heyer. They are Regency period novels, although they were written from the 1950s up to 1980s is when she was writing them, I think. No, 1970s. But a lot of people remember that. When I said to my mum I'm reading a Georgette Heyer, she's like, I remember reading those when I was a teenager. They're really great. So yeah, so I read that. It was absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. If you like Jane Austen, or you like Charlotte Bronte, perhaps not Charlotte Bronte, but if you like Jane Austen, you like those kind of, the feeling that you can get from those novels, then it's not written in that as well as Jane Austen, of course not, but they really are lovely books. They are absolutely charming, lovely books. I read that one, I flew through it. It was an utter pleasure. It was an utter pleasure to read it, and it's really made me consider romance and how I think about romance books, so that was really good. Then the second book I picked up, I was actually reading it alongside, so that was a bit of a difference, was Outrage by Vincent Borgelossi. I don't know how to pronounce that surname. And this is, again, the 5 reasons why O.J. Simpson got away with murder. I'm actually going to talk about this more in a different video, because I'm going to do a video about real crime writing, because I've got quite a few books that I'd recommend if you're interested in this subject, and I thought I'd do a separate video on this. I really enjoyed it. It's actually it's quite a heavy book, but it is absolutely fascinating if you are into real crime. And what was wonderful about this book, and I will just quickly say this, it's called Outrage because he is outraged at the not guilty verdict. It was written just about 6 months after the not guilty verdict, and he is scathing, he is furious, he is outraged, he is beyond angry, and it is quite something to read a book where that is palpable, where that injustice, that fury at the injustice is palpable, and it was phenomenal to read it for that. I only read it in chunks because of that wave that was coming off the page, but fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So I really recommend that and enjoyed that. I was in a thriller mood, very much a thriller mood, and I picked up The Poison Artist by Jonathan Moore. This is, the bodies fished out in San Francisco Bay were a puzzle with no sign of how they had died. Then toxicologist Cabe Maddox uncovers an unspeakable horror connecting them all, suggesting the work of a deranged killer. It is brilliant. It was one of the Radio 2 book club books from the Simon Mayo show, and they're normally pretty good. They're normally pretty good books, and I really enjoyed it. It really reminded me, if any people that are into thrillers, it really reminded me of the books by David Hunt, because he was set in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it had that feel. It had the feel of time lapsing, and that you just got caught up in the moment, and you were wondering why he was doing things, and it was just brilliant. Really, really good. I read it in about a day and a half because I just couldn't put it down. It was one of those books. If you want a thriller that is it is gruesome, but it's not too gruesome. I just thought it was brilliant. I really, really enjoyed it. It's so evocative, such an amazing feel of the fog and the mist of San Francisco. Really atmospheric, really good. So that was a good one. So then I was in a complete thriller mindset, and I wanted more thrillers, all the thrillers. So as I said on my other video, I was looking up about this, and it said, if you like The Poison Artist, then why don't you look for Jeffrey Deaver, and in particular the Catherine Dance novels. And so I picked up the two from the charity shop, The Sleeping Doll and Roadside Crosses, and I read both of them. I just absolutely shot through. So I read The Sleeping Doll first. Brief synopsis: Special Agent Catherine Dance is an expert in kinesics, which is the science of interpreting behaviour. It makes her a brilliant interrogator, but she's up against Daniel Pell, a master of control who mesmerises, seduces and exploits people for his own murderous ends. And he's a convicted killer that is who is talked of the same as as Charles Manson, and so there was all about that. Now it's interesting because you know who's doing it. It's written from dual perspective, so you know who's doing the killings. You can see how she's trying to the California Bureau of Investigation, how they're going after him because he escapes from jail, and they go after him, and it is brilliant. Now, what was so good about this book, really fast-paced, really gripping, but what was so good about it was her character, Catherine Dance. Now, with a lot of thrillers, they talk about it's got a strong female lead, or she's a strong female character. Now, Catherine Dance, in both this, The Sleeping Doll, and in the second one, Roadside Crosses, which is about the internet and bullying on the internet, very good as well. She's not a strong female lead. She's a strong character. Full stop. Just a strong character. She's incredibly respected for what she can do. The people around her work for her and respect her, not because she's a strong female, not because they're told to, but because she's a strong character, because she's good at what she's doing, and she's got integrity, and she's a really fabulous character. Full stop. And that was really lovely. It was really lovely to read a book like that where it didn't go into kind of male-female stereotypical roles in any way. It was just, she is such a good character. So I thoroughly enjoyed it and totally recommend these. So that was The Sleeping Doll and Roadside Crosses. This one, this one was a lot more traditional. This one was different, and I think I perhaps started to understand how he's framing the works a little bit more. So it was a little bit more, I knew there were surprises and shocks coming, and so I was preparing myself for them all the time. But even then I still gasped at the end. So those two were great, and again, shot through them. And the last book that I actually have read this month is Bound, What Happens When an Angel Falls. This is a library copy and I just picked it. It's Sarah Bryant, and it's a YA novel about there are no such things as monsters, Sophie told herself, no demons, no witches, no ghosts, except that all of her life Sophie had been seeing things, and she goes to the top of Scotland to run away from things, and it all unravels. It's a YA book. I kind of got it because of the angel fall things. I really like books about angels. I really like books about thrillers and stories about angels, especially The Watchers. Both non-fiction and fiction. I've read a lot about the Watchers in particular, because that's quite fascinating. And I was actually only looking up the other day about the Book of Enoch, which is where he writes an awful lot about the Watchers, and actually thinking I might see if I can try and get an edition that is all about the Book of Enoch and about the Watchers. So, and then partly because, and so that was really good for that. The first, I would say, 100 pages is really setting the scene, and then it kicked in, and then it was a good racy read. It's the first of a series. I don't know if there's only 2 in, I don't know, but the next one is called Riven, and that was in the library, so I shall pick that up sometime. So that was good, so I thoroughly enjoyed that. Now going to the audiobooks. A real mixed bag with audiobooks this month. I raced through this one, which was A Murder Announced. My very old, looks like I've chewed this one at some point. In a moment's crisis, I took the book and I don't know why that is so old, but look at that. And it is actually narrated by the marvellous, the beautiful, the amazing Joan Hickson. So that was a really pleasurable read. A Murder is Announced. Typical Miss Marple mystery, which I knew. I think I can recite, actually. And then I got from the library, I found that I got an app on my phone, which means that you can get books from the library, which was great, audiobooks from the library. So I had a rustle through, and I thought, well, I need a book that I can have that is round the house, because I listen to audiobooks when I'm cooking and when I'm cleaning, and so all ears can hear them, especially my 8-year-old son. So they have to be clean. So something like an Agatha Christie is perfect, because I know what the language is going to be like. I know what the scene's going to be like. The murders are going to be clean. There's not going to be gruesomeness. So they're pretty good to have going on around the house. So I thought, well, I'll try this one. It's Murder Underground by Mavis Dorrell Hay. I had the book, and then I saw it was available as an audiobook as well. So I thought, well, that's perfect, isn't it? Because this is a 1930s murder. I think it was written in the 40s, but it's actually a 1930s murder. And I thought, well, that's going to be the same. Oh, I got about 10-15% of the way through, and I had to give it up. It isn't the story. The story's not great, but it isn't the story. The problem is the narrator on the audiobook is trying to do all the voices, which, great, love you for doing that, but all the blokes' voices were exactly the same, and she was talking really slowly, as though, I think she felt it was much more of a dramatic performance. I don't know who she is, and I kind of didn't look it up on purpose. Anyway, I had enough. And I found myself looking for other things to listen to rather than listen to that one. So I gave that up. I'm going to read the book, but the audiobook, grim. The other one I looked at was Genesis by Karen Slaughter, because I was in thriller mood, and I got about 25% through that, and then again I had to give it up because it broke all my rules. It was sweary McSweary, and the gruesomeness of the killings, I kept having to switch it off, or I was having to listen to it with my headphones, and then I thought, I'm not sure I want that close. It wasn't working for me, and I'm sure I have actually read it years ago, because I think I know who did it. I think I know what all the big reveals were. So I'm thinking, I actually do think I read this years ago. That was Karen Slaughter by Genesis. It was very well read and what have you, and I didn't have any problems with the narrator, but the language, it wasn't suitable for everyday listening, so I gave up on that. And so this is what I'm currently listening to. I'm about halfway through this one, which is The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side, sometimes known as They Do It with Mirrors. So I do believe that the traditional one is The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side, which is again a Miss Marple mystery set in St Mary Mead, and it's fabulous. So I'm listening to that. So that family listening. The other books I'm currently reading, I've only just started this one, Becky Chambers, A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. It's, I would say, literary sci-fi. Just brilliant. As you can see, I have only just started it, but I am loving it. What it's really doing is really reminding me of Ian N. Banks and his culture novels. Superb because of that. So I'm loving that. The other books I'm reading at the moment I'm reading Whispers from the Earth by Taz Thornton. I'm reading 1, maybe 2 of the stories a day, which is beautiful so that I can absorb them. I am about halfway through a reread of this, which is Marianne Williamson, A Return to Love, Reflections on the Principles of A Course in Miracles, which is esoterica and metaphysical reading, so that's really good. So I saw her last month. Anyway, so I'm about halfway through that, and again I'm about halfway through The Places That Scare You, A Guide to Fearlessness by Pema Chodron, who is an American Tibetan nun, a Buddhist nun, and she's written a lot of Buddhist texts, and this is one of those, so I'm reading those as well. So those are my books that I'm currently reading at the moment. Not too bad. How long's it been? Not too bad. So yeah, how are you? Are you all right? What are you reading? My best book this month? Well, I have to say the Jeffrey Devers have been really good, and I did like The Poison Artist. That was probably the one that I went, oh, I loved. So yeah, so that was good. That was good, but one or two disappointing ones as well. Okay then, lovely to see you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye bye.